The actual reporting errors, if you call them that happened, it's an unfortunate double whammy in a sense. Underreporting of the Jimmy Savile allegations prompted an outcry and seemed to lead to over-reporting of another related incident. It's often said that that second Newsnight programme named Lord McAlpine. They didn't put a name out there, which might have got them off the hook in an earlier age, perhaps. But what you had was jigsaw identification. The BBC didn't name this guy, but many other people knew who the BBC was talking about and ran with the name on social media, on Twitter. So it does compel us journalists and editors to wonder and perhaps be even more careful about jigsaw identification in the social media age. Since then, since the outcry, I mean, the BBC has this curious way of self-flagellating itself over the last couple of weeks to identify what went wrong. And I think the resignation that has happened of the Director General, George Entwistle, wasn't necessarily a direct response to Newsnight's error itself, but partially also a response to the round of interviews he gave. He didn't seem able to convince some of the powers that be at the BBC Trust that he was across the issue entirely. I think the BBC needs to keep calm and carry on at this point. Stop with the self-flagellation, steady the ship. That's the most important thing at the moment. We need to stop resignations happening because of handling or mishandling of the original incident. If calls are made for Chris Patton to go, it will be because he gave George Entwistle a full salary payoff, not necessarily because of mishandling or incorrect structure at the BBC earlier. Public polling into trust in the wake of the scandal has shown a reduced trust in the BBC. That's a problem right now, but I think many of us would like to think that doesn't necessarily dent the British public perception of the BBC in the long haul. It's a very dear public institution, along with the National Health Service, for example. What you do have is the wider media context that is happening. Despite many of the pressures that are going on in some sectors of the media, we have this explosion of options, of channels that compels many private operators to wonder whether the BBC needs to be doing everything. That argument has been in the backdrop for some time. It's amplified right now because of what's happened, but it doesn't necessarily have a direct consequence because of what happened. It's possibly not the right time to be asking that question even more vociferously. And yet, certain people in public policy, in the current government we have right now, which has already cut back on funding to the BBC, are asking that question right now, as is Rupert Murdoch, who I saw tweet a couple of days ago that perhaps now is the time to wonder whether we shouldn't shrink the BBC. I think everyone needs to address the issue at hand, the Newsnight issue, the unfortunate reporting of sexual abuse, specifically in isolation, and wonder about the other stuff, the role of the BBC. Yes, that's a valid issue to discuss, but perhaps not at this very heated moment.